It's strange how one small, seemingly insignificant moment can change your entire life. For me, that moment came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a crowded cafe, when I noticed a tattoo on a stranger's arm that looked hauntingly familiar. It wasn't just a design. It was our family's crest. A symbol I had only ever seen in an old photograph tucked away in my grandmother's attic. Seeing it inked on a total stranger sent chills down my spine. I couldn't explain it, but something deep inside me whispered that this wasn't just a coincidence. It was the beginning of a truth that had been buried for generations. The tattoo was intricate, a circular pattern of vines wrapping around a small crest depicting a raven perched on a broken sword. I had spent hours as a kid staring at that same design in one of my grandmother's old diaries. She used to tell me stories about our ancestors, the Blackfeathers, a family line that, according to her, was wiped out long before I was born. I always thought it was just one of her fantastical tales meant to keep me entertained. But the tattoo on that stranger's arm told me otherwise. I remember staring a little too long, trying not to seem weird, but my curiosity got the better of me. When he looked up, our eyes met. He was in his mid-30s, rugged-looking, with a quiet intensity that made him stand out even more. I finally gathered the courage to ask, "Excuse me, that tattoo, where did you get it?" He glanced down at his arm, almost protectively. "This? Why do you ask?" I hesitated before answering. "Because I've seen it before, in my grandmother's old things. That exact design." He froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked in a low voice, "What was your grandmother's name?" "Margaret Blackwell," I said cautiously. His expression changed immediately. Shock, confusion, and something like recognition. He leaned back in his chair and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Do you know her?" He nodded slowly. "Not her, but the name. Blackwell. My grandfather used to tell me stories about a feud with a branch of the Blackwell family. I thought they were just old ghost stories. But that symbol," he pointed to his tattoo, "was the mark of our side of the family, the Ravens." That conversation marked the start of an obsession. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. I dug through my grandmother's old boxes and journals, trying to piece together fragments of her life that suddenly felt like clues. There were faded photos, handwritten letters, and one in particular that caught my attention. A sealed envelope addressed to Eleanor Blackwell, the one who seeks the truth. That was my mother's name. She passed away when I was 16, and we never talked much about her side of the family. My grandmother and mother were distant, always avoiding discussions about the past. Now, as I stared at that envelope, I felt my pulse quicken. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. Inside was a single page, yellowed with age. The letter read, "If you are reading this, it means the time has come. The Blackfeather bloodline was never meant to disappear. It was meant to hide. The mark of the raven binds us to a promise broken long ago. Find the man who bears the mark. Only then will the truth be revealed." I must have read those lines 20 times. The man with the tattoo. He was the one the letter spoke of. My hands were shaking as I called him, explaining everything I'd found. His name was Daniel. He agreed to meet again, this time bringing something of his own. An old leather-bound journal that belonged to his grandfather, Henry Ravenwood. When we met, Daniel placed the journal on the table and said, "My grandfather never let this out of his sight. He used to say the truth could destroy what's left of us, but maybe it's time we finally learn what that means." The journal was filled with coded entries, sketches of the raven symbol, and maps leading to various locations across the countryside. We spent hours deciphering it, and one phrase kept appearing over and over. The Blackwell Pact must remain unbroken. Neither of us knew what it meant, but one entry caught my eye. It mentioned a small estate outside of town. My grandmother used to live near that area before she moved. We decided to visit. The estate was old, abandoned, its windows shattered and walls covered in ivy. But as soon as we stepped inside, I felt a strange pull. like the air itself recognized me. In one of the rooms, we found a chest hidden beneath the floorboards. It was locked, but Daniel managed to pry it open. Inside were stacks of letters sealed with wax, documents, and a black and white photo of two young men. One of them was unmistakably my great-grandfather, Edward Blackwell. The other was Daniel's grandfather. They were standing side by side, smiling. On their forearms, identical raven tattoos. It didn't make sense. My grandmother had always said our family was cursed because of a betrayal, that the ravens had taken something from us. But if our ancestors had once stood together, what could have driven them apart? We read through the letters, each one revealing bits of a forgotten history, a secret society formed during the war, a pact to protect a valuable artifact, and a betrayal that tore their families in two. The artifact was called the Heart of the Raven, a pendant said to hold a piece of a sacred vow. It was meant to be passed down through both bloodlines, symbolizing unity. But greed and fear had turned brother against brother. The final letter in the chest was written by Edward Blackwell himself. It read, "I have hidden the heart where neither side can claim it until the blood of both ravens stands united once more. Only then will the curse lift." Daniel and I exchanged a long look. "So, we're the last of them," he said quietly. "The ones meant to finish what they started." Over the following weeks, we became partners in uncovering the rest of the mystery. Every clue led us deeper, to libraries, old archives, even church records. Piece by piece, we rebuilt the story. The Ravens and the Blackwells had been two halves of one lineage, once united by a common cause but torn apart by betrayal and pride. The tattoo wasn't just decoration, it was a sign of belonging, a reminder of the pact that had been broken. Then one night, while combing through one of my grandmother's old boxes again, I found something I'd never noticed before. A hidden compartment under the lining. Inside was a small velvet pouch. My heart was pounding as I opened it, revealing a pendant in the shape of a raven's heart, split down the middle. The Heart of the Raven. The pendant looked ancient, its silver dull with age, but there was something strangely alive about it. I called Daniel immediately, and we met the next day at the old estate where it all began. When I showed him the pendant, he pulled out something from his pocket. Another half. "I found this in my grandfather's things last night," he said. "I think it's time we put them together." When we joined the two halves, a faint click echoed in the room. The pendant locked into place perfectly, forming one complete raven heart. At that moment, something strange happened. The air seemed to shift. I know it sounds crazy, but it was like the house itself exhaled, releasing a tension that had been trapped for decades. A drawer in the wall creaked open on its own, revealing a final note. The last words of both our ancestors, written together. "To our descendants, may this unity remind you that blood divided can be mended. Let our mistakes be your lesson, and let our bond live on through you." I couldn't stop the tears from falling. Daniel stood beside me in silence, the pendant glowing faintly in his hand. It wasn't magic, not really. It was history, forgiveness, and legacy, all tied together in one simple act of truth. Since that day, Daniel and I have stayed close, almost like family, though not by blood. We rebuilt the connection our ancestors lost. I had the raven tattoo inked on my own wrist, not as a mark of secrecy, but as a reminder of what we overcame. It is strange to think that a stranger's tattoo, a chance encounter in a coffee shop, was the key to unlocking centuries of pain, secrets, and silence. That design, once hidden in dusty journals and forgotten letters, now lives on as a symbol of reconciliation. Sometimes I still catch myself tracing the mark on my wrist and thinking of that day. The day a stranger's tattoo unlocked my family's past, and gave me a future I never knew I was missing.